Good day everyone, welcome back to prorevenge subreddit with stories about people getting back at someone with sweet revenge after being wronged. With no further ado, let's get eargasm with rKush. The first story of today's video was posted by prestigious issue 330. Terror neighbors make our lives hell. Return the favor by getting them raided. As we found out we'd be expecting not one but two kids, we knew we had to move to a real house with more space. At the time we were still living in a one-bedroom studio, one up from the ground floor, with its only entrance being a metal fire escape, stairs, not ideal for a pregnant woman, let alone to live with two small babies. So we found a privately leased house that was newly renovated and had all the rooms and a large garden we were looking for. Signed the lease and I immediately collected the keys. As the owner drove off, the woman next door comes up to me, immediately demanding we not make noise before noon as her boyfriend works nights and sleeps in, and a whole bunch of other do's and don'ts. So right off the bat, I knew trouble incoming. As the house was fully renovated and not much had to be done, we were like, don't poke the bear. We do the things that make noise in the afternoon. We moved in after 2 weeks and the whole street was warm and welcoming. My wife was almost due to give birth to my twin daughters and some offered help with anything we needed. Really kind people. They also told us about our neighbors. Nobody liked them. He was a big bully and got into arguments with everybody. Also were known as radio pirates, as in illegal broadcasting on the radio with all Dutch bangers. This music is just terror on your ears and possibly used on terrorists on black sites, which went alongside them partying. Thursday to Sunday till 5 in the morning. Loud music, constant yelling, always drunken, etc. Something to look forward to when moving in, certainly with two babies on the way. The partying began immediately, full blast. Real classy for someone demanding to be quiet when the douchebag needs his beauty sleep. Then one day, my father-in-law came to put new grass in. He has his trailer parked at the back of our houses, which is a public space. Not according to my neighbor though. He claimed that that exact spot where the trailer was parked was his spot and we had to move the trailer. Not going to happen, as I was not planning to walk around the house with the sod. He gets angry right away and demanded I move it. I told him to go screw himself. I was done with him already then and there. I'm also ginger, so besides having no soul, I do have a temper which is always in check until you provoke me repeatedly. Anyone who knows me would tell you that you had to make an effort for that to happen. We went on walking and the end of the day comes when my father-in-law wants to leave, hooks up the trailer and bam, there was a douchebag telling him off. Yelling is his part and he better does not do this again or else. Mess with me all you want, I can handle it. But what you don't do is threaten my family. I ran outside and I told him in no uncertain terms to back off or he be the sorry one. Total bluff on my side. Yes, I have that temper, but I'm not impressively built and have no hidden fighting skills. I do fight dirty. He backs off. Father-in-law leaves and I go inside where I find my wife crying. She got scared of him maybe doing something to her father and/or me, and this is something we don't need right now, combined with hormones from being pregnant, and you can paint that picture. So I'm even more pissed, but had to promise not to act on anything. I won't, dear. Not yet anyway. Time went on without any real incident, and then came the time my wife goes into labor. Didn't go smooth and ended up having to deliver with a C-section, or whatever it's called, because daughter 2 was almost strangled by the umbilical cord. We had to stay 3 nights, excruciating nights due to a lot of things. Finally, we get to go home. Family had put a giant sign in our front yard welcoming the babies. The sign was already up for a few days before coming home, so our friendly neighbors knew about it. But did they give a flying crap? No, they did not. From the first night on, they started to party and broadcasted their terror music. They started at noon and continued to until 5 or 6 in the morning. Classy. They also kept going for days, so it wasn't just Thursday and Sunday, it was all week long and the next. So we were broken, hardly slept. One of our daughters suffered from heavy cramps combined with all the noise and her parents at the end of the wits, so she cried a lot. And then I just had it. I researched some things on radio pirates, the laws and regulations, and on his large 5-meter plus antenna in his backyard, which was illegal in itself, but he used it to illegally broadcast on the radio, which meant he had a lot of equipment to do so, which was even more illegal and can even get you jailed. But at the very least, they could seize it all and fine him big time in the 10 to 45k area. Now, I did not immediately turn him in, but instead were looking for another house to lease first. This is because I figured it wouldn't sit well with him having a wife and 2 babies in the house alone during the day because I had to go to work. I hear you guys thinking, why not involve the police? Well, they are utterly useless in cases like this. We called once and what they did disturbs me to this day. They rang their doorbell and immediately started by saying we called them about noise complaints. Yes, you read that right. No protection or whatsoever. Just blatantly told them we were the reason they are there. Told them to keep it down and that was it. They didn't even even follow up with us or anything. As you can guess, douchebag now was even more pissed and told me the next day, or yelled over the fence that separates our backyards, that I really should not do that again. A threat yet again, of which I told the police. I didn't report it the first time as I chalked that up to alpha male and heat of the moment, but without witnesses to collaborate, nothing could be done yet again. Some days later, I walked out the front door and he just stepped out of his car, came up to me demanding I cut back some of our ivy that I grew on our side of the fence because it's tangled in with his giant antenna. He would be gone for some hours and I could come into his garden to cut back the ivy that grew on their side, and then the light bulb went on above my head. I told him politely that I would do that immediately. Why? Because that allowed me to find out the make and model of this antenna to ascertain its signal strength, where the cables go exactly, and what kind of cables they were, again to know the signal strength it handled. Also, it gave me a good view of the equipment he had through the window so I could snap some photographs of it. This was the icing on the cake, because in the meantime, we did manage to find a new home and already had signed the lease, so we would be gone in 2 weeks. Luckily, we only had to paint some walls for the girls' room and just back up our thing and move them to the other house. So after I trimmed the ivy and collected my evidence, I went online that night to find out the proper channels to report a broadcast pirate and which entity was tasked with catching said pirate. Turned out, I had to call the telecom agency but also the police. Wasn't too happy with the letter, but I remember I have a nephew that works for the police. Officially, his area was immigration, but knew enough colleagues that could help us and we could trust not to confront them again saying I was the one that sent them. That was extremely important for our safety when doing what I was doing. So I gave both the agency and the police all evidence I collected, pointed them to the frequency he pirated so they could listen in. Then they started a neighborhood investigation, which wasn't necessary, but this was to cover our butts to make it look like it got caught by accident, because they had an active investigation in our area. You never know what you can learn from legal documents and such. We asked them to wait with the raid. Yes, they raid pirates' houses, preferably in the early hours of the day because of his beautiful sleep rendering him incapable of fleeing or hide evidence, etc. We moved 2 weeks later and they raided him 2 days after we moved. All of his equipment, computers, radios, cell phones, and his car was seized. He left in cuffs. His wife/girlfriend did too, for making a big scene and trying to interfere, all of which was live reported to me by one of my ex-neighbors who were equally ecstatic about this. It turned out this wasn't the first time he got caught, but his third time. His car had no insurance on it and his MOT failed. This would normally have no big consequences because he didn't drive it while raided, but they had the guy surveyed on for a week, and that meant he was seen driving it while not having insurance and valid MOT. He was fined somewhere around 30k euros, went to jail for 12 weeks, and everything seized was destroyed except the car. His girlfriend had to do 40 hours of community service. They had to sell the house, which made for very happy neighbors as they too were over and done with them. As I say, I do fight, but very dirty. You have to make an effort for me to get to that point. They did and suffered. Over a year later, when shopping for groceries, I encountered them with the foulest of looks. If looks could kill, I'd be a smoldering heap of ash, but nothing more than that. Well, this guy broke the cardinal rule, one illegal thing at a time. Good on you for taking them down. And also, if you're breaking the law, don't be an a-hole and give others reason to look into you. Our next Reddit post was from Hello Sally. That is what you get, indeed. This is a little story from 2 years ago. I live in a very popular street where parking is difficult. There is a house with a parking space right on the street where I parked whenever I couldn't find anything else. One day, I came to my car and noticed a small sheet of paper on my windshield. The people living in that house told me not to park my car in front of their house because it's their property. I was confused because it's an officially marked parking spot on the street and they had their lot surrounded by a fence, which my car didn't block or anything. My friend works for the city council and I asked her if that piece of the road is private property. She did some research and asked the people responsible for that matter, and she said no, I was allowed to park there and it's not private property. So I did. I parked my car there again. Of course, the next day, piece of paper on my windshield, this time saying they would get my car towed. I ignored that. Nothing happened except more notes on my car that I just put back in their post box. I talked to the neighbors and they had a similar experience with that spot. That's probably why it was always unoccupied. The people living in the house had their driveway, didn't need the spot, so they just didn't like it if someone parked in front of their house. One day, I came to my car and noticed that someone had kicked off my side mirror, the one towards the fence. While I was busy picking up the glass from the street, the guy from the house came out and said something like, "Well, that's what you get." I was fuming. I called the police and everything, but I couldn't prove anything. Okay, that was the point where my ideas kicked in. In my country, you can rent parking spots to park cars there with advertisement on them. My friend's dad dad, the one that worked for the council, had a used car dealership and did that sort of advertising quite regularly. So I told him about what happened, and 2 days later on that parking spot was a car trailer with a huge sign. It was 3 times taller than my car. I was so happy. Plus, he replaced my broken mirror. And then my time came. I saw the house owners in their garden fuming about the advert, and I approached them with, "Oh, that is what you get." The faces. They were priceless. They tried to get the trailer removed, but the spot was legally rented. And you know what? It's still there. Now there's still a lack of parking spaces in my street, but I think that is worth it. Guys, imagine OP's friends' dads get in contact with a strip club or adult toy store and sell them the ad space. That would be hilarious. Moving on to the final story of today's video, Stalker Boss ends up regretting it. Posted by Tommy Noise. I used to work in a convenience store, and the store manager was a real prick. Misogynistic, offensive, as in haha cancer is hilarious, offensive, creepy, and a downright bully. Sometime after I left, he was fired after he decided to turn a professional interview with a young woman into a conversation about her favorite porn. She reported him and he got the sack. Awesome. Anyway, this guy, we call him Andy, fancied himself as a real leader. I mean, he wasn't. He set impossible tasks and yelled instructions while doing absolutely nothing in the office in the meantime. I had a colleague called Gabby, who, to be honest, I didn't get on with. However, I knew that at the time she was having a really tough time at home with a 3-month-old son. One day in the winter, it had snowed fairly heavily. Gabby rang in that morning and told Andy she couldn't make it in as he was snowed in. Everybody knew that wouldn't have been true, and that it was likely she hadn't slept well with the baby crying and whatnot. But you know what? Who cares? She always worked hard and she deserved a break. It was only a 4-hour shift and the store was dead anyway. No customers were gonna walk over snow and ice for the morning paper. Plus, we were overstuffed. However, Andy had a problem with women. He was always disrespectful and demeaning. Like the rest of us, he knew she wouldn't be snowed in, but he didn't let it slide. He wanted to catch her out. Andy abandoned the store, serious gross misconduct, and got in his car. He made the 15-minute drive to Gabby's house and took pictures of her car, her front driveway, and the rest of the street to prove she wasn't snowed in. He then called her into the office at the end of the week for a disciplinary. When she came out, she was in tears. She was on a final warning. Andy wouldn't want a dismissal on his quarterly record, so he just threatened her instead. This didn't sit well with anybody. We hated him anyway, but he went too far, making a single mom cry over something so ridiculous. Well, here's the good part. What Andy didn't realize was that on the last work night out, he has drunkenly revealed to the team that he was a serial cheat. He would regularly cheat on his wife of 18 years. He also has 2 teenage sons. He was justified as having natural male hunger. If you ever heard a more disturbing quote, Andy used to tell his wife that in the evening he finished at 11 p.m. This was a lie. He never worked later than 9 p.m. After an evening shift, he'd go and screw whichever side piece he had going at the time. Well, one evening, he finished at 9 p.m. and he got in his car and started driving. What he didn't realize was that Gab, who wasn't on shift that day, had dropped her son at her mom's house and had waited outside the store in her car for Andy to leave. She tailed his car to his hookup house and parked 3 houses down. She then proceeded to take pictures of Andy hugging and kissing this random woman before pulling her inside and slamming the door. You can see where this is going. Andy didn't come to work for a week. When we saw him next, he looked broken. His wife had been anonymously sent a picture of him getting off with another woman. She kicked him out and had contacted a solicitor to start a divorce process. His sons had blocked his number and wanted nothing to do with him. Of course, he knew who sent the pictures, but he had no proof, no evidence. Gabby stayed at the store for another 3 months before moving into a recruitment position for a pharmaceutical company. As far as I know, she's still there today and doing well. As for Andy, I have no idea whether the divorce went through or not. I blocked him on all social media after I left the company about a month after this whole thing. What I do know is that he's a disgusting, reprehensible human being who thought he was invincible. He thought he could walk all over people, bullying and belittling as he went. Well, he soon realized that nobody is invincible, and I thoroughly enjoy watching his collapse. Well, you want to take pictures of someone being dishonest, don't get mad when someone does the same to you. And that brings me to the end of our video today. Hope you reach your eargasm with rKush. Good day, everyone.